What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill. I'm Graham Giason Matthews. Hope you guys enjoyed WrestleMania last night as much as I did, but the fun does not stop there. Of course, tonight we have the Monday after WrestleMania, which is always exciting, which I'll get to in a moment, and SmackDown Live after WrestleMania too. So the WrestleMania weekend is extended this year with SmackDown Live on Tuesday. But speaking of WrestleMania Monday, that was the topic of the WWE 24 special that aired last week after Monday Night Raw. That aired on the WWE Network. Great stuff. I've talked about it before. Last week, the week before today, obviously, week ago from today, I guess. Botching all over the place here today. I talked about the WrestleMania 30 24 special as seen on the network. And all these 24 specials, I think that was the first one. All of these 24 specials are really, really good, this one being no exception. Of course, taking place the night after WrestleMania 32. A great episode of Raw that night, might I add. But it also kind of reflects back on a number of other moments and matches and other shit that happened, and really the importance of the Monday's Raw after WrestleMania and from years past, dating back decades and years and whatever else. So we kick it off. First of all, I should mention there's a couple different focuses throughout this special. We get to see a bit of Maurice, we see a bit of the club, we see Enzo and Cass, who also debuted that night on Raw. So we kick off with Enzo, who says he's beyond humbled if the crowd recognizes who he is and goes along with his lines. And they have no idea what to expect. I'm sure they're nervous as all hell. And Cass says he's anxious and excited at the same time going into Raw that night. But I mean, you kind of gotta realize, and I mean, even Cass said himself, there's no better place to debut than the night after WrestleMania, especially if you're an NXT person, because the crowd is bound to know exactly who you are, and they knew every single line of Enzo and Cass's shtick that night, which I'll get to momentarily. And it's been said before, and it's very, very true. The crowd becomes the star of the show, as it's said on this special. Can't get enough by the Phantoms, as played on this special as well. Enzo calls it opening day for WWE, which is very true. I mean, the new year for WWE does not start in January. It starts the night after WrestleMania, which is why this episode of Raw is always so important. He calls it the most important night of the year, setting the tone for the year to follow, which again is very, very true. Seth Rollins recalls, they kind of show clips of all the big moments that have happened on the Raw after WrestleMania, from Paige's debut in 2014, to Neville's debut in 2015, to Brock Lesnar coming back in 2012, Goldberg returning, or rather debuting in WWE, the night after WrestleMania 19 in 2003. Seth Rollins said his favorite Raw after WrestleMania moment was Dolph Ziggler cashing in, which I'm sure is a moment for many, many people. I was actually on my list when I did my list of top 5 favorite post-WrestleMania Raw moments, I think about a year ago. I think it was last year I did that, and that was a great moment too, which was really insane. I mean, I know it's kind of hard to think of now. It was 4 years ago, and Ziggler is pretty much irrelevant at this point, but 4 years ago, he was still pretty, hot in terms of momentum, and the crowd went fucking nuts. I just remember watching that at home live on Raw and just going crazy myself when Ziggler won. It was a great moment. So Seth is not wrong in saying that's his favorite post-WrestleMania Raw moment. His favorite post-WrestleMania Raw moment. Michael Cole says that he recalls being taken out by Brock Lesnar in 2015, how the commentary team was pretty much all taken out, with the exception of Byron Saxton. They put him out there. He did a poor job, and the IWC, the Twitter universe of the WWE fan base, was clamoring for JBL to be back, which I don't recall at all, but I do remember people shitting on Byron Saxton because he sucks. Or at least back then, he sucked a lot worse than he does now. I very much remember that very vividly. We get a shot of Maurice, who says she's excited to be back after 5 years. The last time we saw Maurice before this Raw after WrestleMania was back in November. I mean, that was when she was released in November of 2011. I remember the day she got cut, and I was very disappointed. I've always loved Maurice. When she came back on this show, I fucking loved it. I went nuts. I was sad to see Ryder lose the belt so soon, but Miz getting back the belt was whatever, but Maurice being with him was key. I think the last time prior to that she may have been shown on TV, with the exception of the Hall of Fame and red carpets and shit, because her and Maurice and Miz have been in a relationship in real life for years. Maybe in the summer of 2011, so it was close to 5 years. And she had no idea whether she would be involved that night or not. And I kind of find that hard to believe, just because they probably had plans to put her with Miz, at least for a short time. And I had heard that they had big plans for Miz coming out of WrestleMania, so they must have known at least a couple weeks in advance. I'm sure that's what she told people in terms of what she would be doing that night. Maybe she knew she was coming back, but she didn't know what she'd be doing exactly. Maybe that's what she meant. I'm not sure. But Miz does say he wanted to work for her for a long time, which I find that very easy to believe, just because they should have been paired up back in 2010. Miz was on the rise to superstardom. He didn't really necessarily need Maurice back then. And they did show a brief clip of the two interacting on that first Raw of 2010. And even back then, they were still dating in real life. So I thought it would have been a perfect pairing. They put Maurice with fucking Ted DiBiase Jr. instead. And I love Ted DiBiase Jr., but the pairing was destined to fail, and it did. It did nothing to help either of them, other than really just keep Maurice busy. But yeah, finally he got his wish, and it worked out wonderfully. I can safely say a year later, they are one of the best things to happen in WWE in the past year. So Enzo and Cass, we cut back to them. They say they are proud of what they did in NXT. Enzo talks about being signed by Triple H many years earlier, being discovered via a YouTube video back in 2011. And Cass says, and one of the bigger quotes, no pun intended, coming out of this special was when Cass said, or what someone told to him anyway, the only reason why you have not been fired yet is because you're 7 foot tall, which does not shock me at all that someone might have said that to him during his time in FCW, NXT, whatever. Probably FCW, because he was pretty decent by the time he arrived in NXT with Cass, or with Enzo rather. So you see, I mean, Cass is pretty emotional throughout this entire special. But yeah, I know that I find that very easy to believe that someone would have said that to him. So Enzo says, that night when we found out we were going up to the main roster, that night we found out felt like our graduation from NXT. And it really was. They showed the footage of them being talked to by Triple H at the TakeOver Dallas show backstage. They showed that footage on the Breaking Ground finale. Not the finale, but like the Revisited or Reloaded, I think it was called. I talked about it here on WWE Network and Chill about, over the summer about a year ago. And it was great footage. So they weren't really the focus of that special as much as they were for this one, but it was still cool to hear that because they were a pretty big focus. At least Cass was in the original Breaking Ground show in late 2015, early 2016. Gallows and Anderson, we cut to them and they arrive at Raw to sign officially their WWE contracts. They had no idea what the reaction would be backstage, whether there would be resentment or whatever, but everyone is very happy to see them. Gallows talks about seeing people he hasn't seen in years, because of course he used to work for the company as Festus, as Fake Kane, as Luke Gallows, so he's obviously welcomed back with open arms. And, of course, Carl Anderson is as well, despite that being his first, run in WWE. His first time backstage at a WWE event, I believe, other than like serving as an extra in 2008 or whatever it was. They're happy to see AJ. AJ is very happy to see them back, or with him in WWE. They were put together soon after on Monday Night Raw, like a week or two later. Cesaro, he's not really a focus of this documentary, but we do get a few brief clips of him. He finds out, we go back to him finding out his injury is worse than originally expected, and he's not out for a couple weeks or a couple days, he's out for a couple months. So Cesaro sat on the sidelines from November to April when he came back the night after WrestleMania in that main event, that great main event, Fatal 4-Way number 1 contenders match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, and who was the other guy? Kevin Owens, AJ, and Jericho. Amazing match. And he says in the time that he was gone, he came up with his new entrance as kind of like going from James Bond to like a James Bond villain or James Bond himself, whatever. I think James Bond, going from that to being the Swiss Superman, which is an amazing entrance even a year later. So we cut to the Raw itself, getting footage of the entire Raw from that night, which I have to watch back one of these days because that was a pretty damn good Raw. Definitely one of the better Raws after WrestleManias in recent years. So the crowd sings No Chance in Hell, like the first segment on the show when Vince comes out to address Shane McMahon. We get footage of Enzo and Cass's debut. Enzo's mom is in attendance. They come out to confront the Dudley Boys, which was just an amazing debut. And Triple H says that he's proud of them. Cass gets emotional about that. I remember he cried when Enzo got hurt, and rightfully so. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. When Enzo got hurt about a year ago at Payback and he had that concussion issue. So Cass is a pretty sensitive guy from what it seems like, but that was cool footage. Always awesome to see stuff like that. And then Maurice, we go to her, making her return on Monday Night Raw, people asking her if she's back. She was one of the few people who knew about the moment. She says it's just that. It's a moment being back with her husband on TV. Miz says that she motivates me. It's great to have her on TV with me after all these years. And again, as I said, one of the best things to come out of WWE programming in the past, really in the past year since they came to TV together as a couple, as an on-air couple. We get chance for a fucking beach ball. My brother Vlad is on, makes a brief cameo. He has shown, I think his Twitter handle is @TheVladJoseph, if I'm not mistaken. You see him holding the beach ball, which is great. Before someone hits it out of his hand, it goes back around the arena. What they don't show is the fact that it actually happened during the Corbin-Ziggler match. And I was pissed they were doing that during the Corbin match and not during something else, something like worse off or whatever, something pointless. Because I loved, Corbin's debut. I thought it was great, but they must have been bored or whatever. But it was pretty damn funny watching it back now. Styles, who won the main event that night to become the new number one contender to the WWE Championship, said, "It's everything you work for to be a part of that one moment." And he's so right in saying that too. And again, I know footage was aired by WWE on their YouTube channel after that match happened about exactly a year ago from today or tomorrow, whatever, of AJ getting emotional following that victory in the main event of Raw that night. So it obviously it obviously means a lot to him. His kids were there, his wife was there, and I think he had said on that WrestleMania 32 documentary I talked about a couple weeks back, a couple months ago, I'm pretty sure he had said something along the lines that his kids were disappointed he didn't win that night at WrestleMania, but he had an inkling of an idea of what was going on the next night. So he was happy to find out about that. He says, "I feel like I'm home." To kind of close out the special, we get a recap of that entire Raw WrestleMania weekend. Undefeatable by the Young Rising Suns, I believe is the band name, starts playing. And they also show footage of Baron Corbin making his Raw debut, Apollo Crews making his Raw debut. So you can only focus on so many people. Cesaro, Maurice, The Club, Enzo and Cass, AJ. So I'm glad they covered the big superstars. They didn't really cover all that much about Corbin or Charlotte's first night as Raw Women's Champion after her big win at WrestleMania and her debuting the new title. It debuted at WrestleMania, but you had that big segment on Raw the next night. And Crews debuting too. We get a brief clip of the footage that aired during that aforementioned Breaking Ground Reloaded special from about a year ago with him getting the news from Triple H that he was being called up. But we don't really get much beyond that. They show some clips of him on Raw, but that's about it from that night. And maybe for the better, just because he really hasn't done anything in the past year. Unfortunately, he's a great talent, and he'll still be a big star, I think, at some point if they can kind of have him rebound from this. But he really has not done anything of note in the past year. And even Corbin, though, he's done quite a bit in the past year. He's had a great first 1 year debut year in the WWE. So I was shocked we didn't hear more from him, because I know he kind of seems like the standoffish type, but he really came out during that Breaking Ground show, and that's when I initially became a fan of his. So I'm shocked that we didn't really get much of a more of a focus on him. But that's really only small gripes, nitpicking. Other than that, another great 24 special. WrestleMania Monday aired last week. Check it out before Raw tonight. Should be a great Raw tonight on the USA Network. But yeah, before that, check out WrestleMania Monday. I know they came out with a DVD for this special, including other matches and moments in their entirety. All that stuff is on the network. So, and this special is only 35 minutes. So I don't know if I would recommend getting the DVD, but if you really, really loved it and loved the Raw after WrestleMania, then maybe it's for you. But yeah, I give it 2 thumbs up. Check it out on the WWE Network. Next week, I have no idea what we're talking about, whatever's new on the network, whether it be that Bring It to the Table special from about a week ago, from right before WrestleMania or whatever. I'll talk about it right here on the show next week, next Monday on WWE Network and Chill. So until then, guys, I'm Graham Giason Matthews. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, subscribe to the channel for content every single day of the week. And as I said before, guys, I'm Graham Giason Matthews. Enjoy the Raw after WrestleMania tonight, and I'll catch you guys down the road.